successfully. They have to be the future people who need to replace me temporarily or sometime, if whenever it happens, permanently. So that top 10 list would be trained, upgraded, be associated with all aspects of the business to ensure that tomorrow they can take care of independent cost centers or profit centers. So I just recounted my story as to it took me a lot of time to come out of the manager mind frame to be a person who needs to be free to think of so many other things so that the teams work nicely. So in nutshell, probably I can think is that, as he mentioned, talent is that's the right word. To look for talent inside or outside the organization, to nurture it, to upgrade it, to support those talented people in the organizations by efficient systems. They need time to be, mature. I've also felt that all that has been successful in my company which was endorsed by me personally, whether it was as simple as a New Year party or a picnic or probably a client visit, anything. So that endorsement has to be there and communicated very well to the whole organization. So support and patience of the top executive is extremely important for any team to be successful. So, and last of all, I think faith in your team leaders and members is what counts hell of a lot. So that's in nutshell those 4 golden points, and my top 10 list works like anything. Yeah.
Thanks. So we can clearly see the difference when Sean speaks as a startup, talking about building a small team, and when Harshveer talks about things, he talks about more of a system, more of a process. And I guess that's the difference that you see in a startup versus somebody who's running maybe a larger organization.
More service oriented.
More service oriented. So Sean, do you think that building a team for an enterprise versus building a team for a startup, those require different skills? And how important is it to hire the first few people? I was reading somewhere and someone said it's the most critical to hire the first 5 people in your organization. And if you hire the right people who are storytellers, like you said, you can succeed. So is it different when you hire for an enterprise versus hiring for a startup?
Yeah, so I don't have a lot of experience from an enterprise perspective, but from a startup perspective, I agree with that statement 100%. The first person you hire is the banner carrier for the second person that you hire. And if you get the top level talent for the first person, guess what? They're going to attract the second person, who's then in turn going to attract the third person. And this has actually been the case in our business, where the first person we hired was a salesperson. The second person we hired was a designer who happened to be the best friend of the first person. They just happened to be 2 talented individuals. And in life, we see that a lot, right? Where people of extreme talent tend to migrate together. So if you can get that first person, you can reach out into their networks to get the second, and in turn, get the third. So yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Okay. Actually, from an enterprise perspective, how do you think managing or building a team is different than a startup? How is it different? You mentioned the process, right? So the process takes care of itself, but is hiring different for an enterprise? Would you hire, maybe not storytellers, would you hire someone else?
Yes, I would probably hire as a services more like team members, because as a startup, I would be managing a lot of tasks, whether these are administration or marketing or selling or whatever. So my first focus at that time and still would be to have execution team members, who would execute the task very well. He said, it's important to get the best talent, but probably as a startup, it may not be possible to get the best talent. Mm-hmm. So you have to check out that who has the potential. Of course, in a way, it turns out to be the best talent, but who has the potential to grow with you is what I looked for at that time, and I would do the same.
So as a team, when you build these people and you've hired people, you want to keep them together, and there are people who are different. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
How do you sort of manage to keep different people together? Is it the same, the vision of the leader? For example, if in a startup you can actually have the CEO or the leader who actually just keeps telling them about the vision, so everyone's aligned to it. I sort of faced the same problems in my company when we were a smaller company. It was easier, but as you got bigger, I think the issues changed, and people didn't really see that sort of vision. And then it was a question of managing people of different sort of skills, different interests together. So how do you manage that? If you possibly could speak, and do you have issues like people from not really aligning to the company's vision, or people who are so different but talented in their own right, but they don't gel as a team?
Well, yeah. So from first part of that comes down to the hiring process. To steal from Zappos, right? 50% of why you're hiring is culture. So you're hopefully hiring people that share the same vision with you from day one. Once you get them in there, then it's up to you to lead from the front. In a small organization, it's really easy to do that, because when it's 2-3 in the morning and you as a leader are still working, and you're leading from the front, your 13 employees, they're going to see you, But as a big organization, not 500, 600, 700,000 people or whatever the case may be, they can't see the blood, sweat, and tears that the leader is putting into it. So there's certainly that gap there. But from a small team perspective, it's really easy. It's really easy as long as you're leading from the front.
Okay, so I have this sort of statistic. Somebody I read in somebody's blog, and you said culture. So he says when he hires people, there's 45% of it is a cultural fit. Scrappiness and drive is 35%. Intelligence is 15%, and experience is 5%. It's completely different for me. I mean, I look at experience first, intelligence next, scrappiness, man, nobody's scrappy anymore, and cultural fit, they'll understand. So it's kind of different. So do you agree with this, or do you agree with this? Or
You see, I did realize, and that's why at the time of hiring, the maximum storytelling of the organization happens in my organization now, because later it's very difficult to communicate as you grow bigger and bigger. And frankly speaking, that's why I invest a lot of my time in those top 10 to ensure that they communicate further to the others. But you're right, your approach is probably more like my approach, frankly speaking.
And so talent is we talked about hiring, and I think that it's hard to find talent. In India, there are so many people, but you you don't find the right sort of talent, people who can fit into jobs. I think it's the same in the US. You hear that there are people available, but no one's really fit to take on jobs. So do you kind of see those sort of problems that sometimes you actually hire people who are not necessarily the best for the job? Have you ever done that? How do you, if you're growing rapidly and you need to hire somebody and you can't find the right person and you have to build this team, how do you do that?
Well, so first off, I think when you're hiring someone, to sort of change those percentages a little bit, I think a very large percentage of it that I weigh is this person willing to learn? Is this person willing to grow? Especially in a startup, you wear a lot of different hats. You're going to be designing one day, and the next thing is you're going to be writing code. And the next thing, you're going to be pulling up carpet because we're moving offices. So that's really important. So hopefully you can develop internally as the company is willing to grow. That we found to be very, very successful. And then beyond that, that's when it gets tricky, bringing in that outside.
So you hire a person, so you're looking for people that are not available. Do you see those problems in the US at all?
Oh, for sure. So we just put out an ad recently for a salesperson and got somewhere along around 200 resumes or something like this. Almost none of them were qualified. They're either, let me rephrase that, they were either way too qualified, like these are guys who have MBAs, business school, masters, graduate, who want some insane amount of money to come work for us, or they're people who are fresh out of college who have never tried to sell anything to anyone. And if you ever tried to do that, that's a marketing degree in itself. This is a tangent, but the one thing I've learned is if you want a marketing degree, pick up the phone and try to call someone and try to sell them something. You'll learn immediately what it takes to be a salesperson and what to be a marketer. But anyway, but those type of people have never made cold calls before. These are the type of people that we were getting an influx of. So we had this huge gap, this huge range of way overqualified to way underqualified, and it took some time to find the right candidate.
And you still waited for that real estate person to join you then, the salesperson?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
So you didn't really hire anyone, you just waited for the right person?
We waited for the right person.
We can't afford to wait.
Exactly. So how do you then build a team? I mean, you hire people you don't even want.
That's true.
How do you build that team?
I think a lot of things get into it. For example, the person may not be fit, but these additional things probably, he's been playing cricket for 10 years, he's a team player, he's got medals.
Of an organizational structure, when you're building a team, what sort of structures work? Are there flat structures that work or layered structures? You talked about a layered structure, or more like like an organization building that, right? Is that what you believe is the right structure? And do you need structures, or just, people are very flat, there's the CEO and that's about it, and everyone's working, and maybe even the CEO is working. So what's the right sort of structures when you build a team?
In our case, 2-level, and
There's just you and everyone.
You, me, and team leaders, and after that, everyone.
Okay.
And very important, because all these are now intelligent professionals, especially in IT, and a lot of times they need to tell something, or they need to just talk to you. So for their sake, for their comfort level sake, we kept the layers minimum. Mm-hmm. It helps.
How do designations matter in a startup? Maybe you could answer that question.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. You want it to be flat, right? As a leader, you're hands-on as much as you can, but after that, everybody's got to step up and perform their role and do it well. You need superstars, and so yeah, I agree 100%.
So do you give designations to different people? Does everyone need a designation, or so there's a CEO, COO, CTO, whatever?
I put in the bottom of all my emails Sean, and I think I have co-founder and director of something because I had to, because somewhere they wanted a role or designation. Sean, that's my designation. And it works culturally too, because then what happens is you can empower your own employees to step up. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy to fall into this trap where everybody wants a title, and so people were then taking their title and then saying, well, I want this salary because now I'm the director of this. And so what we did is we said, pick your title. You can be CEO. Google what a CEO is worth. Well, we're not going to pay you that. You pick your title. So that worked really well for us.
Well, I would say this is more of a cultural thing. In US, it doesn't matter. But here in India, titles, they do.
No, I mean, in my company, we hired this business development guy, and he just wants my designation. I said, what do you want? He just told me assistant business development manager. Go for it.
I mean, exactly that's what I did.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
what you do, right? And then we hired an HR manager. So you are the HR manager. She says, I want to be the assistant HR manager, because if I'm the HR manager in a smaller company, how do I grow? I mean, it's kind of crazy. Yeah. Sean, so and maybe the question's for you as well, but I know Sean has an experience with that. So you fired your own CEO, so you were building this team, and you were the co-founder and you fired the CEO. So what happens if the leader himself is not really working out? The team's great, but the leader's not working out. How do you tackle that? I mean, he fired the CEO because he wasn't the CEO. What happens when you have these leaders and we're not gelling in? So do you kind of call the top tier, or just fire that person? So how do you handle those sort of situations?
It's happened with us once, and you give the option as to what he would like to take on in addition to this or besides this, and you be frank with them. I think the more you delay that is a problem for the organization. So it has happened twice with us. Once when one of the top guys has taken on another role and succeeded very well, and the guy has chosen to go out. So but you have to face it.
What happens to the team morale at that stage? So you let your CEO go. Did people understand that?
Well, in a company of 13, so let me take a step back. So we fired the CEO because the CEO wasn't doing a very good job. So in a company of 13, the other 13 members, they know that the CEO is not doing a good job. So they knew long before that something wasn't right. So actually, it was a perk. We went from this to this as soon as he was gone, overnight. Yeah.
And so if that happens, then you obviously have the validation, right?
You have the validation in advance, but you have to still do it in a classy way. You know.
So what did you do?
Everybody feels happy about it.
Yeah.
What was the classy thing that you did?
Well, it was after he was let go. Classy thing right there. There wasn't any negative talk about him. No bad talk. We didn't say, "Hey, we hated that guy" or that real bad word. Said, "Look, he's gone, and here's our direction." And that was a really important part. Is okay. Look, he had this direction. Here's our new direction, and then our team, we're going to go do this now that he's gone. And that was really important so that your employees could get behind that. They had something to grab onto immediately.
So taking on from what he was saying, the difference between the U.S. and India. So how do you, maybe you have experience. You looked at our company and the teams here, and you've obviously traveled quite a bit. So what's the difference building teams in the U.S. maybe building teams in India? Do you have any sort of perspective how that could be different?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Nobody knows the answer.
No, I mean, I have what we have seen and what we have learned and we are trying to implement is that more and more, for example, our interaction with Germany, Australia, and US, the job description and profile is very well defined, much more well defined than what we do here, and it's more like it's skeletal and the person is supposed to take on from there. So that is what we are trying to learn and implement, that we do a better job of doing that. So that's a stark difference that we have. So like I said, systems, in that the description, profile and the exact task description is more defined, that's it. There I've seen it is much more defined. They do take time out to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my answer is easy. I don't know. So we use Samir's company. We have 3 full-time developers there. So we just rely on him. That's it.
That's simple.
It's simple.
So building international teams, so how did that work? So you have people in the US and you have people in India and they're a part of the same team. So how easy or difficult that is? So different cultures, different perspectives, and even for you to understand how the Indians work, so. And for us, it's how the Americans work, right? So, what kind of challenges do you see building teams? And maybe, I don't know if you have people on site or you send people on site, or maybe the managers there, and then you kind of work with local people here. So how does that work? How does internationalization work in building teams?
Well, for me, it's really important, one, to show up here, right? When we first started this company, we had developers here. They were developers here. Now they're Timsy, Rajneesh, Gurpreet, go down the line. I mean, it's important to know the people, right? It's beyond that they're just doing work for you. They're people, right? And that, on the flip side, they're going to respect you for that. So, and getting to know, just like any employee, you treat people internationally the same way you treat people who are sitting right next to you. You treat them well, and you set expectations, and that's what we found has worked well.
Our visits to our clients and their visits to our office has exactly helped this way. The bonding has been stronger than ever. The stability has gone up dramatically.
Mm-hmm. So Indians tend to be not very direct, and Americans tend to be very direct. How do you so once you know that you've met people, do you find it easier to make the other person understand that hey, you're not doing a good job? And in India, you would couch it in maybe a little uncertain terms and say, I think you could do this better or whatever. So do you kind of do you think things get better if you do they understand the culture better? Do you think people in our team understand the culture better when you tell them that something is not really working out?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, you're 2 people having a conversation.
Okay.
Same here. Actually, it's been easier for me to tell people whether they are doing good or bad. They know it already, courtesy interaction with the international clients. It's actually made my task easier and more direct.
Okay, thank you. So we'll open the floor. Do you guys have any questions that you want to address regarding building teams?
Yeah, I have a question from Sean.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Kshitij Mehra. I'm running an organization known Youth Shala. We are into career counseling of students. So you said that initially if we have to hire a guy, we have to switch over our hats. That is true. I've faced that kind of a situation. What I felt is if a guy is that much comfortable in switching over hat, he will prefer entrepreneurship rather than joining a team. What about that?
So your problem is that you're hiring entrepreneurs.
Yes. What if I'm hiring?
Where's the problem, right? I mean, give them projects, right? Let them be entrepreneurial, but within your organization. Tell them a story. Show them how they can be entrepreneurial in your organization. You're just the figurehead, right? Like you're the leader, but they're putting in a lot of the work too, you know. And give them the credit, back them. That's what I would
So
do.
even giving them a share of the organization.
No, I'm not even. No. Don't give away anything. No, but in terms of the tasks that they're performing, let them think on their own, or at least let them think that they are thinking on their own, right? And in that way, it's sort of free spirited, and they have the feeling and sensation of being entrepreneurs.